All right, please help me welcome Angela Carter.
All right. Howdy, y'all. How's everybody doing? Okay, so I would really like to dedicate this, and I can't actually see you, but I would like to dedicate this to my daughters, Eve and Eleanor. Hey. In the 1998 film Sliding Doors, a woman played by Gwyneth Paltrow approaches the platform of a train. And as she does, the train doors close. But cleverly, the movie shows us how the doors being closed affects her life. But it doesn't stop there. Okay, it does what only a movie can do. It also tells us what would have happened had she had made it on the train to her destination. But in real life, we don't get to see what would have happened. If we show up and the train doors close, typically what we do is we get a bit flustered and then we move on. Unless those doors are abuse and mental illness. There's no instinct to tell us where to go after that. We don't know when the next train is. We don't know who to ask for help. In fact, we feel like invisible passengers. But we'd probably fill every single train at the station, but somehow we still feel like we have our own individual closed door. I'd go as far as to say is when you turn back around to the world after you see that door shut, the world never looks the same again. But I'd like you to join me in that moment that my door closed. I won't go into deep detail, knowing that there are children here. But I do feel that it's important that you understand how far I've made it by knowing where I began. I lived in a Southern Virginia town of 240 people. This town was so small, I kid you not, I could get on my front steps and I could hear each individual car going by on the highway 2 roads away. We had a post office, an ABC store, and a laundromat. The nearest grocery store was 25 minutes away. I want to warn you that the house that I live in, that I'm about to invite you into, is not one that you would choose to live in even on its best of days. But today, there is a warning of a drought. It's so hot outside, the only noises that you are going to be able to hear are AC units humming and some dogs barking. One of them is my dog. We don't bring dogs inside the house here. But don't worry, I take good care of him because he's my only friend. My brother is playing Super Mario Brothers. Everybody remember the Nintendo? I can remember the start of that game just as clearly today as I could then. It went dun 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 dun. And my brother still hasn't mastered the fact that no matter how many times you lift and jump your arms up, it doesn't make Mario go any higher, okay? And I'm bored, and I want to play, and I just can't figure out why it is that my brother is able to always be the one to play first. My mother's in her bedroom napping, and there's someone else in the room with my brother and I, someone that I don't know that well, but yet they live with us. If we fast forward 30 minutes, I'm staring at the individual particles of dust in a beam of light through the windowsill right above the television. Did you want to know that the train had come? It had gone. It had left me there, and I did not even know that that train even existed. And not long after, if you think things just come in ones, not long after I was molested by a schoolboy on the bus ride. As I stepped off of the bus, tears in my eyes, the students that had witnessed it said to my 6th grade teacher, "It wouldn't have happened if she wasn't so quiet." There are words that stick with me. They have made me become who I have become today. And would you believe that none of that information was ever disclosed to my parents? But you see, by that time I had become a mute. The world had told me that my voice didn't matter. So when I told my story and no one listened, Okay, what they seemed to think was that meant it wasn't true. But the reality is, everyone that witnessed it, whether or not you hear my story, it's still the truth. But your straight A, kind, well-mannered student of the month student within no time at all enters middle school and becomes that kid that you tell your children not to hang out with. I was near failing. I was the one smoking in between classes. Okay, I had my first really serious relationship at 14 years old. And by 15, I was unsuccessful in an attempt on my life. Would you believe that when I attempted that, I was only about 12 feet away from my mother and she didn't even know? But my life did have something in common with this movie, because she missed the train. And I want to point out right about now, if you have not seen this movie, you're a little late. It was 1998, so I think I'm good with spoilers. But because she missed the train, eventually something wonderful came out of this. No matter how difficult my life has been, I'm here because someone showed up, listened, and they taught me that my voice is not only important, it has the profound ability to affect and impact other people's lives. That person was poetry. Okay, you may not think that poetry is a person, but to me it was everyone, and it was everything. And it was my friend, and my listener, and my caretaker, and my parents. It was my lifeline. So let me ask you this: how does a little girl in the middle of nowhere, never having been introduced to poetry, feel the need to write on papers throughout the house, on the closet walls, on my own skin, on lampshades? How is that even possible? And I know the answer. I believe it was because it was ingrained in me in order to survive. Poetry allowed me to say what the world wouldn't. I won first place in every young authors contest that I entered. When I was told that my mother nearly lost her life to a domestic abuse episode with my stepfather and went away for a year into a shelter, poetry was there. Not people, poetry was there. Poetry was there when people couldn't and wouldn't show up. My writing meant that I made it through years of school bullying. If I had a dime for every time I've been called crazy in my life, I would be rich. And the 26 years I'd lived before being properly diagnosed with a mental illness that still plagues me today. I attended community college, and I didn't think I had a future. I was resigned to the fact that people like me just don't get those chances. But one day when I walked in, there was this wall to the left-hand side, and there was a sign, and it said, "Study abroad in England. Details on how to apply below." I didn't fully qualify. I wasn't one of the smart kids, or at least I didn't apply myself. But there was only one scholarship for our campus. And I found out 2 weeks later, unfortunately, that one of my friends did receive that scholarship. Now, you say, why, unfortunately? It's because although I was happy for her, I was resentful. This is somebody that had plans to go into university. This is somebody that had supportive parents. This is someone that just came back from Paris with trinkets and beautiful clothes. And I had never seen beyond Virginia. But days later, a phone call came through, and it was my grandmother's voice, and she was a Southern woman. Let me tell you, it sounded about like this: "Angie, oh my God!" That's about how it was. It's that high-pitched, yes. Okay. And she says, "You got it, Angie. You're going to England." They had created a second scholarship for me. And I knew that my life would and could never be the same. But when I made it to England, I studied British literature. I walked around those streets. I was a new person reinventing myself. And I saw art, and I saw bands, and I lived life to the fullest. Because when you don't have that sort of life, you don't take it for granted. And then one night, I was in the windowsill of my dorm, and I met this British man named James. And I'm not going to lie, he was quite intoxicated, so he was very funny, okay? It was a very fun night, okay? I needed it. And he's made me laugh ever since. But weeks later, I returned home. And as I'm in the car, my dad's taking me back from the airport, I say to my dad, I say, I think I met the man I'm going to marry, and I have got to find a way to get back to England. And I had no plan. But a scholarship that was supposed to last only a few weeks, or actually I think it was 5 weeks, became me returning to England for nearly 5 years. I married, I began to write the most confessional poetry of all my life. I created my new life. I created a child. But unlike the movies, my issues didn't end there. I'll just tell you that my life has been a series of doctor's visits, medication changes, deep depressions, hospital visits, counseling, and self-loathing. It never ends. But poetry, my husband, and now my 2 beautiful daughters won't let me give up on myself. My community won't let me give up on myself. So fast forward years later, and James and I actually came through here. This is before we had kids, but this is how we ended up here. We actually were going to Massanutten for a very late honeymoon. We were poor. So we had, late honeymoon, okay? It should have been anniversaries or something. And we said to ourselves, this is a kind, sincere, friendly place. Let's move here. This is a true story. And that's why we chose Harrisonburg. It felt like a special place, unlike any other. And shortly afterwards, once we moved here, I'd heard about a poetry festival in Bridgewater. And I applied and was accepted. And this was a big deal for me, okay? Big deal. It still is. And I got on the stage, and you see me now, this is not the same person, okay? I got up there, my kneecaps were popping up and down so violently that I thought people could see them. Okay, it was terrible. My voice was shaking. And I shared the poetry about my life. And would you believe, okay, because I do believe that things happen for a reason, right after I got off that stage, a publisher approached me. And within a year and a half, my poetry memoir, Memory Chose a Woman's Body, was published. It still gets to me, but I was a woman that could not speak publicly, and I was a child that would not speak at all. Silence was a language, okay? It was a language that I was taught, and I've been extremely fluent in it, and it's very hard, even right now, to silence that tongue. But the book not only meant that I was healing, okay? It helped others to gain a voice. It meant that even I built a relationship with my estranged mother, because before the book came out, I had sent her the manuscript. And do you want to know what she said to me? If you publish this, I will disown you. Okay, the book did not cast her in a perfect light. The truth is not always beautiful straight away. But it was a week before my book launch, and I received a handwritten letter from my mother. And it was the most colorful paper I've ever seen. It had the brightest reds and oranges and greens and blues. I'd never seen such colorful paper. And in it, there were some words that stuck out to me, being that I didn't even know that she knew these words. And she says, I now know why the caged bird sings. Poetry made that happen. When I think about my life and what I want to leave as an example and how I live my daily life, I think about a quote that Mr. Rogers said. Everybody knows Mr. Rogers, right? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Yeah, the dude was cool. Those sweaters were just, seriously. But he said, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Some of us are lucky enough to be found by helpers, and some of us, unfortunately, not. But either way, the key to making the world a place that you and we and our children and our children's children and even people that we will never get to know is to be the helper. I am an abuse survivor, a domestic violence survivor, eating disorder survivor, and I suffer with bipolar II disorder, with the main part of it being crippling depression. I survived these things because of life's helpers. And it's important to me to be a helper to others. And that's how I help. I dedicate my life to leading as an example that no matter what you have witnessed or lived in your lifetime, we all deserve to be found by something that makes us feel worthy and that ignites us. I'm proud to be a member of this community, to have seen the proof of how many helpers the Shenandoah Valley encompasses. What I ask that you take away from this, if nothing else, is when you see a painting on the wall, know it might have been a life saved. When you read a child's poem, know that something called them to write it in a world that tells us to get out there and do, and stay busy, and do, and do, and do. The arts save lives. For me, poetry isn't a hobby, it's a lifeline. It's my helper. Its compassion meant that I've been able to travel the East Coast, perform and speak, and help thousands to know that they aren't alone in their struggles. I can't change my past. I can't reopen that door. And trust me, I've tried. But would I change the past if I could, knowing it would change the fact that I'm here in this very moment on the stage, knowing it would change the life I've built because of it? And my answer is simple: no. I'm here representing the abused, the depressed, the mentally ill, the jaded, the weirdos, the misfits, the invisibles, and I'm here to tell them that we are beautiful and we deserve to be heard. I choose to believe that I'm here and you are here right now in this moment for a reason. Because the door closed, I want you to see how many doors I get to open. It's a lot of doors. Before I give closing remarks, I'll come back on stage, but I want to share with you what I've decided to do with my life, how I've become a helper. So I'm going to show you a 3-minute video, and then I'll do the closing remarks. The world may command you to stay put. It may endeavor to convince you that the wingspan of a woman can't outsmart the shackles on each foot. But listen when I tell you, no storm could shush me back to sleep. No voice of foe could ever make us drown in the tears we refuse to weep. But you see, you can't drown the woman who was only known of the flood, and you can't knock down a person that learned to walk the world on their knees. All we can do is rise. But just because we've yet to stand doesn't mean we were born to bleed. So woman, you be the wingspan of the feathers which created the whole wing, and man, you be the soldier fighting on behalf of the victims not yet free, and child, you be the nest, the egg, until you become the entire sky. And we should all carry on asking the world, why? We could be anything. We could be everything we choose to be. My purity was not destroyed by the hands which marked me. And as for those of us made to drown, we choose to help others stay afloat. We know that the waves will hit you in threes to keep you down. So woman, you be the wingspan and you create those flying wings, and man, you be the soldier fighting on behalf of the abused like me, and child, you be the nest, the egg, until you become the entire sky. And we'll fight the war. We won't fight just to be taken down, and we won't accept spoon-fed lies. We won't stop offering bread to those who starve. And we won't stop accepting those that haven't yet found out who they are. And we won't pass by the homeless as if they don't exist. And we won't teach a child 2 + 2 and not introduce that rape equals a broken me plus a broken world too. And we won't leave the girl with the face in her hands all alone, because it might be the only safe places anywhere but home. And we won't view the most recent moments of a person's life and pretend to know the whole story, because we can't break a person to make a person. And we will show the victims that they are supposed to persevere over those who once abused them. And then we'll tell them depression ain't just a hiccup if no hope has left them to pick their lives back up. We won't let them lose. We won't let them lose, because the right way ain't made by an easy day, and the brightness ain't appreciated without the cloudiness the rain must make. So you be the quiet fighter or the wordless writer, and don't dismiss those tears you dropped that may have carried a wave that made 1,000 wounded hearts feel lighter. Woman, you are to the sky what the feather is to a wing, and man, you refuse to be anything except for one that helps those in need. And child, you are the sky. Remind us of how to fly. And we must all band together in this flight, because everyone lives and everyone dies. But we need more than breath to be free and alive. Yeah, not bad for a redneck, huh? So today I'm Supermom, active in our community, encouraging people of all ages to create art. And I'm on a personal vendetta against stigma. Both of my parents fully support my endeavors. And I receive messages from all over the U.S., and am 100% open about my struggles without reservation or apologies. All of this is because poetry found me. But there's one important thing that I want to point out to you before I close. Just by you being here, listening to my story, you are helping create a new door for me and those that I reach with my outreach. It takes an entire lifetime to become. I'm still becoming. Don't think I have it all together. I nearly lost my battle with depression in late 2014, and I'm still fighting. But I still see the closed door some days. But now when I turn back around to the world, I'm not alone here anymore. You are here. You. Thank you for being the world's helpers. Thank you.